Pinterest recently released their 2026 predictions for fashion and home, and there's always a lot of excitement around these lists, but there's also plenty of confusion. And that's generally because what trends online often doesn't translate into real life. So today I'm breaking down the fashion trends that Pinterest is predicting in 2026 and sharing my honest take on what will actually filter down into everyday style. And today's video is brought to you by Squarespace. I also have a Squarespace discount code to share with you, but I will tell you a little bit more about that shortly. Hi, I'm Leonie and welcome to my channel. And if you are new here, I'm 58. I'm a former magazine editor turned YouTuber, and my channel is all about focusing on translating fashion trends and making them wearable and accessible in real life. Now, these Pinterest predictions are all based on actual search data. So they're always a really interesting snapshot into what people are drawn to. But trends only become useful when they're edited, filtered, and adapted. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I'm mainly focusing on fashion, but where it makes sense, I'll also touch on trends that are affecting home, beauty, and lifestyle. And that's because this also influences the direction of fashion. So it does make sense to have a look at the bigger picture. Now, the first one, and one that I think is kind of interesting, and Pinterest have called it Glamourati. And looking at this one, it does seem that a little bit of decadence is creeping back in. So according to Pinterest, tailored suits with sculptured shoulders are going to increase in size. Now, I'm sure that that is not what a lot of you really want to hear, because oversized pieces have definitely been featuring in a big way over the last couple of years. But what they have also predicted, and one that I think is a very wearable, very accessible trend, is funnel necks. And we're already seeing those certainly this winter. And it seems like the funnel neck is going to be the base of most outfits. And when it comes to jewelry, it does seem like it's getting chunkier. We have seen a lot of fine jewelry over the last season or so, but some of the chunkier statement pieces are heading back in, according to Pinterest. So it does seem to be predicting that there's going to be a bit of a maximalist aesthetic. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go all in on the trend, but it does mean that you could incorporate some statement jewelry, like a statement necklace or statement earrings, into your lineup. So instead of layering up lots of statement pieces, I would treat this trend as a statement moment. So selecting a piece and wearing that is, instead of kind of a real maximalist approach to this aesthetic. So maybe a chunky gold cuff, a bold chain, some beautiful sculptural earrings, paired with a simple outfit. It's about confidence and presence and making a small style statement instead of being kind of adorned top to toe. And certainly for me, paring it back a little bit is definitely going to be the way to go. I'm going to be pulling out some of my statement necklaces, and you will start to see them reappearing here on my channel. Now, the next Pinterest trend is being called Khaki coded. And if you are in New Zealand, you would pronounce this Khaki coded. And I get lots of comments when I actually refer to khaki as khaki, because it must sound strange if you're not used to hearing it this way, but certainly down under we say khaki. But Pinterest is definitely predicting more of a utility style dressing and this kind of khaki aesthetic. And I have talked about that in recent videos because it's very much a trend across the board that is building momentum this year. And this is one of the trends that I do think makes a lot of sense and I can definitely get on board with. What seems to be changing here is that utility is becoming much more refined. It doesn't seem to be about really chunky military style cargo gear. Instead, it seems to be more about color, fabric, and just some subtle structure. So some of the colors are going to be khaki, olive, stones, those earthy greens, and they seem to be being used in more sort of polished ways instead of that real practical utility approach. So the way I would wear this trend is to focus a little bit more on tone as opposed to absolute function. So things like a beautiful khaki trouser paired back with a beautiful drapey, flowy, sort of soft shirt, or even a gorgeous khaki sweater teamed back with some denim or over some lovely trousers. And what I like about this trend is it seems a little more grounded. We have seen lots of bright pops of color, and that's still very much happening this year. But this is more of a kind of grounded, very easy trend to try. These colors are also incredibly easy to mix into any existing wardrobe. They really work back beautifully with whites, blacks, navies, denims, and any soft neutrals. They don't feel seasonal or really trend heavy. So they are pieces that can easily work back with some of your other more trend heavy styles. So my advice here would be to maybe step back from some of the real sort of hardcore military inspired pieces and just think about this trend in a little bit more of a softer way. This is the easiest way to make sure these pieces are certainly more timeless and less trend-driven. Now, this next one is called Extra Celestial, and I must say that I was a little bit nervous when I first spotted this trend and didn't think that I would even include it on today's list. But I do think there are elements of this trend that we can all kind of draw from and actually enjoy. So Pinterest is saying that in 2026, Gen Z and millennials are going intergalactic. Now, what they are saying is think things like holographic home accents, opalescent eyeshadows that look like moon dust, and cosmic silhouettes straight out of a sci-fi movie. So the way that I would interpret this trend is that I would keep my outfit fairly minimal and then just add one light reflecting piece. And for me, this may be as simple as adding a little bit of extra shimmer when it comes to my makeup, or even reincorporating some of my metallic accents. A few years ago, I leant into the trend of wearing silver crossbody bags. So it might just be about bringing some of those pieces back out and giving a small nod to this trend. Now, this next one is called Wilder Kind, and basically, Pinterest is saying that this is a trend that whispers instead of roars. So they're saying in 2026, Gen Z and boomers will go all in on animal aesthetics. Now, I'm not mad about that. I love me a little bit of animal print, and most of us will agree that animal print is a neutral, but the animal print that Pinterest is predicting is a really sort of softer aesthetic. It's not kind of your really bold, brazen prints. So Pinterest is predicting things like soft fawn freckles in terms of makeup, some butterfly winged nail art, and even some fox-inspired outfits that sort of give a hint of forest magic. And I'd just treat this as a texture and a color story instead of taking this trend literally. So I'd think about incorporating some beautiful soft browns, some warm neutrals, maybe some suede, and some lovely textured knits into some of my outfits. And even some lovely fluidy style fabrics and maybe a little bit of ruching, which is also a big trend this year. But not taking the trend literally, but thinking about creating outfits that feel less kind of structured and a little bit more natural, and probably I'd even go as far as saying organic. And if you love style, but you're also building something of your own, whether it's a website, a creative business, or a side hustle, I want to quickly share with you what I use behind the scenes here to keep the Style Insider up and running, and that is Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for years now, and it's a platform I run my entire business on, especially when it comes to selling my digital products, all of my books, guides, and downloads live on my Squarespace site. Designing my website was really easy. I just used some of Squarespace's beautiful templates, which are also all completely customizable. I send all of my emails directly from my Squarespace site. So if you're thinking about building your own website this year, or maybe selling digital products like me, then what I would suggest is whipping over to squarespace.com and taking advantage of their free trial. And then when you're ready to launch, simply go to squarespace.com/The Style Insider, and that will save you 10% off your first website or domain. Now, if you've been following me here for a while, you'll know that I've lent very heavily into this next trend, and Pinterest is predicting that it is going to continue on well into 2026. Now, I'm very excited about that because it is the trend of wearing lace. Now, I personally love wearing lace pieces, but I do think that this is a trend that requires quite a bit of translation to make it work in real life. When most people hear lace, they immediately think of something that's overly delicate, romantic, or even a little bit old-fashioned. But the way lace is showing up now is definitely much more subtle and much more modern. So think about pairing your lace pieces back with something clean, structured, or even slightly relaxed. So things like what I'm wearing today, a lace-trimmed camisole over a simple shirt or a simple blazer. And what I'm really liking about this shift is that lace isn't all about looking pretty this year. It's simply being used to add some interest and some texture to an outfit. So if you'd like to try this trend, what I would suggest is taking a small element of lace, like a little lace camisole with a small lace detail, and pair that back with some of your more simple, modern, structured pieces. By making sure that the rest of your outfit is unfussy and very simple, it means that the lace is a small statement. It almost makes the lace feel current instead of making it look and feel costumey. Oh, and I will also leave a link to the Pinterest Predicts PDF so that if you would like to go and have a look at some of the other trends that I haven't featured in today's episode, then you can download that PDF and have a look at everything else that Pinterest is predicting, and also to drill down deeper into each of these trends that I've touched on today. Now, the next one is called Vamp Romantic, and one thing that I do need to say is not to be too scared of the names, because there is always a way that we can translate some of these trends and make them work for us. So Pinterest is predicting a rise in what they are calling Vamp Romantic. And while it does definitely sound dramatic, I actually think there's a very wearable version of this trend when it's done with a little bit of restraint. At its core, this isn't about gothic costumes or dressing head to toe in black. It's about mood and darker tones. It's also about romantic textures and a slightly after dark feel, but balanced with modern, clean styling. And I think that there is the key. So when a romantic piece is grounded with more of a simple piece and they're worn together, it definitely creates more of a modern, intentional looking outfit, as opposed to, again, looking like it's a dress up. And my advice with this trend is to keep it really intentional. So one romantic, vampy piece is enough. When everything is sort of dramatic, it, in my mind, just loses its impact. So it's really about having one piece and style it back with some more of your kind of minimal modern basics. The next Pinterest trend is being called Poetcore. And Pinterest says in 2026, Gen Z and millennials will channel their inner wordsmiths with oversized turtlenecks, vintage blazers, and messenger bags. Now, this one speaks to me, being a journalist and considering myself a little bit of a wordsmith. I also think that I'll take a closer look at this trend because it's really practical and it's quite sort of, I don't know, it kind of leans into that kind of grandpa core look and feel as well. I also think it's very wearable when it's relaxed. So think things like oversized grandpa style knits, classic blazers, scarves, and soft tailoring. So it's that real sort of English country styling. These predictions always remind me that trends aren't instructions. They're not hard and fast rules. They're signals. They show us the mood, the direction, and just an overall feeling of what people are craving. But it's how these ideas are translated that really matters. Now, Pinterest is also predicting a rise in what they are referring to as opera aesthetics. And while the imagery around this trend is very dramatic, the way it translates into fashion is actually much simpler than you'd imagine. And it isn't about dressing like you're going to the opera, so don't worry about that. It's about borrowing a sense of richness and occasion. So think things like luxury fabrics, deeper colors and silhouettes that feel slightly more elevated than your everyday basics. And once again, the way that I would wear or interpret this trend is more through the use of texture. So things like beautiful velvet fabrics, maybe satin, draping once again, or like a beautifully cut coat in a deep, rich color. It instantly kind of gives that opera-inspired feel, but without looking costumey and overdone. And that's the key for me. I like to really have a look at some of these trends, but it is about editing them and being inspired by them and almost not taking them too literally. So my advice here would be to keep the styling very simple and modern and basically just let the color or the fabric do all the work. When this trend is edited down, I definitely think that it looks very sophisticated, and don't go layering too many of these sort of dramatic pieces together, because that's when it will start looking more theatrical. Now, this one I had to mention because I think it's fabulous, and Pinterest is predicting a rise in what they are calling Afrohemian decor. And while this one is technically a home trend, I do think it's a really good indication of where fashion is also heading this year. When you do see trends like this emerging in interiors, it usually points to a broader desire for depth, texture, craftsmanship, and even, I suppose you could say, storytelling. And that absolutely translates into what we wear and our clothing also. This one is less about copying a look and just almost more understanding of a direction of style. And in fashion terms, this is going to show up in beautiful, rich textures and fabrics and colors. And what I really love about this particular trend is that it's a nice departure from a kind of a more of a minimal, neutral dressing that we've seen quite a lot over the last few years. And I think the key here with this trend is to exercise, again, just a little bit of restraint. So maybe one gorgeous textured accessory or a beautifully handmade piece is more than enough to bring the influence into your wardrobe in a way that feels really modern and wearable. Now, next up, the Art Deco trend seems to be getting a little bit of a modern makeover, according to Pinterest as well. And they are calling this particular trend Neo Deco. So new Art Deco. And this is another home sort of lifestyle trend. But I do think we are going to see some of this creeping into fashion as well. And the easiest way to wear this trend would be just to add some geometric style earrings to your outfit or metallic accents and pairing them back with more structured silhouettes. And this is definitely going to make your outfits and this particular trend look modern instead of it looking too retro. And as I said, I will leave a link to the full list of 2026 Pinterest predictions in the description box below. It's a really simple PDF. It's a fun read, so I'll leave a link to that if you would like to download that and take a closer look yourself. Anyway, that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, I'd love you to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.